For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's A-M-P-I-R-E. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now, or, well, as I record this, it's not up yet. So it's either Friday or Saturday that's going to be up. Anyways, it's about the new leadership with guys like Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. And by the way, I recorded an audio interview with Wagner about all this that I'm probably going to play at some point next week. Very interesting conversation with an interesting guy. Like, I'm fascinated by leadership, and I think he's very smart. So I enjoyed the heck out of talking to him. So anyways, that's for a future time, but the story is going to be up on ESPN.com. So give that a read. And if you want to become a club member, do me a favor, you go to the Empire Media YouTube page, preferably on your laptop. I think it's easier. See the word join, click on that, find the club level membership that you're comfortable with, and go from there. For you gold members, I'm planning to have former tight end Logan Paulson on for a private Zoom sometime after the mini camp wraps up in early June and before I go away on vacation. So anyway, stay tuned for that. And, that's always a good time, but those private Zooms, you get your Q&As in there, but I want to bring Logan on because he's super smart and you can ask him whatever you want within reason. Anyway, so stay tuned for some announcements about that down the road. In a minute, I'm going to be joined by the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, as we discuss his thoughts on what he has seen and heard from a couple of times being out at the Commanders facility for these OTA practices. You've heard a lot of what I've had to say, and now you can hear what Bram has to say. And we talk a lot about Jayden Daniels and other topics, of course. And we talk a lot of positions, right? Left tackle, whatever. So talk about, or just offensive line in general. So anyways, talk about a lot of stuff. So stay tuned for that. And just one other little nugget. I recorded a conversation with Louis Riddick earlier this week. So I'm going to be playing that, I believe, on Monday. So stay tuned for that. We talk again about Jayden Daniels. And he was very high on him before the draft, had him as his top-rated quarterback. And to be honest, listen, man, I think there was a close gap between Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels. And the more people I talked to, I think it was closer than that gap was closer than it was between Jayden and the others. So anyways, stay tuned for that with Louis. That'll be out Monday. And there you go. Here's my conversation with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein. Bram, you've now had a couple times to go out there and watch the Jayden Daniels experience in the spring. I want to start there because that's always a big thing, but that's what people want to know. How does Jayden look? And we'll get to everybody else in a minute. But your early impressions of Jayden Daniels.
Well, I'm so optimistic about him and drafting him that I go in with biased eyes. It's one of those things where I'm going to be looking for everything positive to start with. And I also want to caution that anything that we talk about here, I'm sure you agree with me, they're not even in pads. They're not even really running a full practice. To give any kind of real general breakdown of what we think he does well, what he needs to work on. I think it's so premature to do anything like that. And we're only seeing a couple of the practices that they're going through. That said, though, he looks great. In shorts and a t-shirt and in 7-on-7 and getting rid of the ball really fast and throwing it short and throwing it downfield. And there feels like there's command. He's already making a bunch of signals. There were even ones that I was watching where he was rubbing his tummy. And I'm like, what does that mean? I already want to know, what is that? And the coaches keep talking about, when they speak to us and when I've talked to them privately, they just keep talking about what kind of work ethic he has. He's in the building before everybody else. They've already told these stories of him on the plane, going over the playbook the second he was drafted. You could see this in real time. This really means something to him. And I think that's half the battle. And then add on that he's an elite athlete and, everything's pointing up. But again, until we get to at least full practices and then joint practices, which is going to be great, and then the preseason games, I think it's kind of hard to know where he is.
And a little plug from my own story I wrote, because that's where that anecdote came from, was on the plane. I wrote about like inside the pursuit of him or what they liked about him. But one of the last things in there was when he was flying back on the private plane, he was standing up in the aisle for an hour going over checks and calls from their playbook. So like that was like a right away thing. So, but that's what that's what has jumped out at them. And, I don't know, you hear the veterans talking about him too. I mean, that's how important is that to have that kind of an early vibe, if nothing else?
Well, I think it matters. I mean, like everybody in the building knows how important he is. Everybody knows like what position he was selected at. Everybody knows that they've needed an upgrade at this position for a very long time. And he brings a much ballyhooed hyped version of a franchise quarterback because of his skill set. But I do think it matters. How does he ingratiate himself with his teammates? I think he's the most, electric quarterback prospect that we've had since RG3. And I don't want to go through the history of that, but we all know how he carried himself, at the time. And so, here's somebody who is fully aware how good he is. He won the Heisman Trophy, is the number 2 overall pick. I mean, he's validated already walking in, but how's he going to work? And so far, the work ethic seems to show up early. I think John Allen said today, as we're taping this, but said today, he's beating me in the building. Right. That we heard about that from in college, like the college coaches were saying that, he was someone they had to kick out of the building or was getting there so early, that he outworks everybody. And so that's at least been a carryover here early, and I expect it to continue. And, it sounds like so far, all we can glean on is the limited amount that we've had around the team, but everybody says glowing things about him personally too. So I'll just take them at their word. And it sounds like it's going that way.
One thing I hope too, is that when Robert was here, to me, one of the mistakes they made early on, just not him, but they treated him different a little bit. Right. And even in the locker room, you really couldn't get near Robert. It was the only time that I've covered this team where he almost had, in essence, a bodyguard, like one of the, Tony Wiley or someone else would sit by him during the open locker room sessions. And you kind of felt like you really couldn't go up to him and get to know him. And it's the only player that I've seen that this organization has done that with. And I hope in Daniel's case that he doesn't have to go up and answer questions all the time, but just to get to know a guy. And also to see other players hey, he's just like everybody else. And I think, do you remember that?
I wasn't here when Robert first came here. I was up at ESPN.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't witnessing it firsthand. Obviously I was following it very closely, but I didn't witness it firsthand. I will say this about Jayden though, and it is different because it's a different group, but they want him treated differently too. You'll notice they haven't done anything that would put him in a, for lack of a better word, kind of silly situation in social media. They haven't put him out forward that much yet. I think that it's not that they're holding it back or coddling it, but I don't think that they want to expose him too much. So I do think they're protecting him, I think I do think it's it's organizationally, they're thinking about it that way, that they understand how important he is. And they want to try to provide the best work environment and not expose him too much early. So I think you've noticed that here. It's not like they're pushing him out.
And I agree with. I'm just talking about sitting in the locker room and basically having a shield around a guy so nobody can go up to him. Because then you don't get to develop any relationships with a guy, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and it also makes it look different for everybody else. I think what they're doing with this too, with him, is they're trying to limit the pressure that's going to be put on him to be the face of the franchise. And I think that's very smart. I think let him, it'll happen organically with him.
Yes. Yeah, it will. And look, I mean, you can't protect him from the reality of the situation. Right. This team's been dying to find him for a very long time. There's a lot of hope behind him. There's a tremendous amount of momentum organizationally because of all the changes that have happened. The real superstar that's getting all the pressure, honestly, and getting all the hype is the front office. Like that's the interesting part of this. Like I think I would argue that right now the star of the offseason is the Adam Peters hire, and alongside the building front office that's changing here a lot over the last week. And I think that's where a lot of the hope and promise is kind of it's so interesting that they went and picked the number 2 overall pick, who's a Heisman Trophy winner, who's an electric quarterback who has this crazy skill set. And so we're all, envisioning all these incredible highlight moments and, who knows what with him at the helm, because it's just different than what we've had for a long time. Yet at the same time, I really feel like the hope and promise of the organization is hinging on what's happening in the front office. And I don't think I'm wrong in feeling that way. I feel like that's where everybody keeps pointing, everything that this team does, everybody keeps pointing back to Adam Peters and his team. That's what people keep pointing back to.
Trades, free agents, quarterbacks, and all kinds of adventures await the Commanders this offseason. Looking for an adventure of your own? The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring has you covered. The country's largest ropes course and zipline park, located in Montgomery County, Maryland, is now open. Named Best Amusement Park and Climbing Destination in the DMV 2 years in a row, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is perfect for birthdays, corporate outings, groups, and families. With challenges anywhere from beginner to expert, there is something for all skill levels. Anytime you're thinking about reaching new heights, make sure you know before you go. The Adventure Park at Sandy Spring is the only ACCT accredited park in Maryland or Virginia. Staying on the ground? Give axe throwing a try. You can throw at traditional targets or play any number of interactive games. You can even upload your own image. So there you have it, folks. Climbing, ziplining, axes, food, and bonfires right in your backyard. Reserve your adventure today at www.theadventurepark.com/Kime. That's www.theadventurepark.com/Kime. Even for ESPN, we had to do, I think, some off-season type moves or whatever decisions. And what was the biggest one? And I put Adam Peters for the same reason that you said, because to me, it's like everything has flowed from there. And, it was his choice. I mean, obviously the organization, but he's a key role in getting Dan Quinn, who then gets all these guys. And then then Peters is leading the way to get this draft class, and the way they're building the front office, Bram, I don't know, like, you hear good things about all these people. I don't know a lot about them that they're bringing in, but what I do know is that the way Adam Peters is conducting the front, or setting up the front office, and just the communication in there, et cetera, is infinitely better than it's been in a long, long time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, everything feels like it's going the right direction. I mean, they made a lot of signings. You could parse out a couple of them, I think, if you want to go. I'm not really sure I was totally on board with that one, but in general, they were extremely aggressive, but extremely disciplined. Everything that they did in terms of term and money doesn't hurt them in the current cap or future cap. They are filling a lot of holes. They're checking a lot of boxes. The draft, I thought, was handled really well. We'll see how it, plays out. Obviously, like, they still have needs, like, no doubt they have needs. Left tackle, maybe corner, maybe receiver, like, they clearly have needs that need to be filled, but everybody's got flaws. And they had a lot of holes to fill. And I think they've done a really great job handling both of the key moments of this offseason. And now they're grabbing people from other organizations that have been really successful. And in the case of, the guy from the Ravens has been there 15 years, whatever, 15 plus years. The young guy from the Lions is interesting. He's only 31 years old. So that was an interesting, certainly Lance Newmark said, we've got to go get this guy. Like, clearly that's what the situation was there. But they are bringing people in from other organizations. It does feel like the communication is there. They are very buttoned up. We don't know what they're doing, what they're thinking. There's no leaks. Like, I like all of that. And then on the field,
I don't.
Yeah, I know you'll get it soon. They got to. It appears as if they got to get to know you first before they trust you. And you know what? I'm all right with all of that. Honestly, to be honest, like, it was different when Ron came in because COVID was going on, and so everything was really, really in a rough situation in terms of having access to the building. Right. So it was very hard to build relationships, but they were also very guarded at first. Like, when they first came in, obviously different circumstances. They knew they were coming into a distressed organization. So like, I think they were being very guarded for a lot of reasons because they weren't sure who to trust. Honestly, I think this is a different situation. The ownership has hired this front office who hired the coach. The organizational structure is one of rowing the boat the same way. We'll see when they hit the potholes, how they react to it. But right now, everybody's on the same page. And I think to your point, like the line of communication, the decisions that have been made, it's all very promising. Like there's not one moment during all of this where I went, I don't know why they did that. Like not once. So It's been great.
And I know that you were jumping around when they signed Jeff Driscoll. Like that was your guy. But I agree with you. And I think it's the number one reason why I think going forward, they finally have a legitimate chance here to build, not just to have a good season. There have been a couple of good seasons over the years, but to build something where you could sustain that. And I think that's the difference. Do you notice when you're out of the field, and it's hard because like, again, anytime there's change, it's going to feel fresh and new and all that. But have you noticed anything different in the couple of times you've been able to be out there, compared to anything in the past?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on the field at the same time. So I think they're really packing, at least the two I saw, they're really packing these practices in. There are multiple units going at the same time, which is actually unusual once you get to, the portion of a practice where it's 7-on-7 and you're actually running plays, to whatever degree you call that running plays. Well, they've got it going on either opposite fields or opposite ends of fields. They kind of have everybody kind of consistently involved. So, and the energy is up. The energy is just really up. And granted, again, like it's May. They haven't lost a game yet. There's no hard feelings for anybody yet. This is all new for everybody. It is very exciting. There is a honeymoon happening and everybody seems to be gung-ho all in. And I'm glad, that that's the case. Will that, continue? I hope so. That seems to be the reputation of Quinn, is that it is going to be very energetic and that people want to play for him. That's all you hear about with them, is that people like playing for him. He's clear in messaging. He gets to know his players. He has personal relationships with them. They end up wanting to play for him. Often defensive players, and Bobby Wagner is a great example of this, came to play for him because they like the way he coaches and they like the style and scheme. Frankie Louvu, same thing. Jeremy Chin, same thing. Signed here because they believe they're going to be put into a position to perform well. And so that's all of this is really good right now. But until we get a loss, it's really hard to know how does the whole group react to all of that. So I'm enjoying the honeymoon, though. I mean, like, I'm not trying to complain about it. I'm enjoying it.
And my thing with everybody too, it's every step in the process. So at this point on May 22nd, when we're taping it, everything's been good. I mean, it's been, is it perfect? No, but is it good? Yes. And you're right. Like as a team, I always go back to, was it 2000? Maybe it was 2000. They started off 6-2. And that was the year Norv got fired, but they were 6-2. And I remember talking to Larry Centers after the season, like, but you guys were 6-2. He goes, yeah, but you don't learn about a team until you get hit in the mouth. And that team did not have the bond or whatever. But the point is, like, you're right. You're not going to know. But what we've seen to date has all been good and positive for this organization. And that's all we can go on right now.
And then the only other thing I could say about on the field, and again, like, I think it's very premature to start talking about who's going to play, who's not going to play, what competitions there are, what kind of scheme are they going to look like. I really don't have much. Like, I know you've said on your podcast here, like a couple times, you kind of hinted that Emmanuel Forms will have to earn his job. And then people ran with that, and turned it into you saying he's not a starter right now, which is not the case. It's not the case.
No, I didn't say
like
that.
none of it's been determined. If you were out at practice, you would notice a lot of mixing and matching with players, and you can make these determinations, but it's not true. Like, Jordan McGee, the rookie linebacker, was out there with the ones, if you want to call it that. Well, he's not playing above Bobby Wagner or Frankie Louvu right now. Like, so you got to take this all with a grain of salt that they're working a lot of guys in it, and they have their reasons for doing this, and we shouldn't be coming to any conclusions about it. But I will say this just off of just a general, now seeing them run around and thinking about their roster and thinking about training camp. There are a couple of things that like stand out to me that I want answers to when we get around to the summer. And one of them is like, I'm very excited about Dan Quinn, Joe Witt defense because the track record speaks for itself. Like with the types of rankings they have, the amount of turnovers they get. That's the real, exciting part. We haven't had that, in a couple of years. We've had a lot of mass turnovers and a lot of sacks, but I look at them and I go, okay, who's their Micah Parsons? Well, that guy doesn't exist on this team. So do I believe they'll be able to generate pressure? Yeah, they've done this for years and years and years. How are they going to do it? And how many people is it going to take? And how much stress is going to get put on the secondary because of this? And so then I look at the corners and I go, okay, like, are they going to get put in some tough spots at times? So this is where I'm kind of starting to generalize thoughts about the roster as it is. Now, seeing them out there without seeing them with what we would call a first unit or anything that we will resemble what I think we'll see on opening day. But these are some of the questions that I'm starting to wonder about. Like, will they generate pressure? Yeah, I believe them. They have guys that can do it, but they're going to have to do it collectively and not rely on a star edge rusher or somebody to do it for them. And how are they going to be exposed by that? And are their corners good enough if they put them in these exposed positions? I don't know. So that's where I'm starting to ask the questions.
And that's where the thing that we don't know yet is either the impact, especially in the secondary, the impact of much better coaching on them. And I think I would say much better that they're going to get this year. But how good will that make them? I don't know. But it's, and what it does for Forbes and St. Jude's, I don't know. But I do know that they will get better coaching this year.
Yeah. And then like I would also say in that position group, like, I don't know who the starters are there. Like, you can't tell me who they are. Like, Igbenogany might be starting. Like, Michael Davis might be starting. St. Juice and Forbes might be starting. I don't know. Like, I think Sammer still is a hopefully day one slot corner for them. I mean, that's clearly why they picked him at that spot. But like the others, that's going to be a very competitive spot. Yeah. And it probably will be the ones that do handle the pressure that's in front of them and how they handle the receivers on the outside. Like those are just, very early questions that I have going into training camp.
Yeah. And I think like, even with Forbes, the dude has a skill set that if you can get him right, he can be a big help, especially with the kind of pressure they're going to bring, but you got to get him right. And again, that's where what will be the impact on him of this coaching. So he'll be a guy that going into camp that we're all going to be curious to see what he does. When you watched Jayden on the field, did anything jump out to you? And again, very, very early. And you're right. We're not watching him against pressure, but you still can see some things.
Again, this is no pass rush.
Right.
But when I watch the 7-on-7 drills, unless they are told otherwise, and this is the part that we don't know, like, are they being told to run a scramble drill? Like, I don't know. Like, only they would know that, and they'd have to tell me they were. But in those, typically, what I'm looking for is the quick decision making. And I think that's what the coaches are looking for. Yeah. And I will say this, there's no pause in him here early. So I think this is a good sign that whatever portions of the Kingsbury offense that are being installed, he's picking them up quickly. And, like, the ball's out really fast and it seems to be going in good spots and it's to an array of targets. And there was one today to Dotson that was outstanding throw, like in the back corner of the end zone. So, it's hard to judge this stuff. It looks pretty on tape when you see it on social media, when he's not being pressured and knows he's not going to be pressured. So we don't know how he's going to react to it. But just from to your point of first impressions, the first impressions are really good. And even after just a couple of practices, like I'd say this about Hal, like his first rookie year, he was not unlike Daniels, a very experienced quarterback coming out of college. He had been a starter, for like 3-4 years, there. So he had a lot of starts under his belt. I didn't see the quick pickup that was happening initially early, which is why I think he didn't really get a shot as a rookie until late in the season. They needed him to kind of progress into it. Jayden feels ahead of that curve to me, but that's just my viewpoint of watching from afar on a couple of practices where nobody's going to hit him.
Right. And I think, but the whole point of that too, though, and it kind of highlights, he's not just a quarterback. He's not a running quarterback. And I think the phrase you have to put is quarterback who can run and can kill you with his legs.
That's right.
But he is, what you see him here is a guy who's a passer and looking to pass. And, and my key with 7-on-7 is how much are they going to run? Because you've seen that over the years, like some guys ran too much. Robert ran too much, even in year 4 for him. And I remember being on the sidelines with guys who played the position and they would be like, that's not a good sign. And they were right. But you don't see that with him now. Again, what's it look like in training camp? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But the first,
but I like your point about this because, okay, think about the really star running quarterbacks when they first came into the league. Lamar had to learn to become a passer. He really was a running quarterback.
Right.
And that's why everybody said, like, well, he'll never be great because he's never going to be a passer. He's never going to be great. To his credit, he has evolved into a much more, functional passing and running quarterback. And obviously he's devastating when he leaves the pocket. Fields came in, he's a running quarterback. He's still transitioning to try to become a passing quarterback. We'll see what happens in Pittsburgh with him. I'd have to ask Kingsbury about this, but I think Kyler was more of a run first, turned into a passer as things went along, but he could correct me if I'm wrong about that. What I'm hoping here with Jayden is it's actually pass first, and it's warranted to be pass first because we know what he can do with his legs. Like, he needs to use that to his advantage when necessary, not as the first option. And we are off to the right foot with this guy if that's what it is. It's way advanced if he is really a passer first, and I think we all know he's capable of it. So that'll be watching again until they're playing people and they're being chased, and his internal clock is going however it's going. Does he just vacate pockets? Well, we got to talk about that. Or does he stand in there, try to be the passer first, go through the progressions, and last resort take off? That's what we're going to find out about him.
Last thing, again, when you watch the coaches, you saw the hype drill and all that.
Yeah.
I always wonder what it's going to look like if it's November and you're trying to do that. But right now it's all good. So, but is there anything else that you've seen out there, the energy and heard from Quinn or anything that just jumps out to you?
Well, I mean, I don't know why we've been doing that drill for years. Me, you, Nikki, Ben, Sam, we've been doing the hype drill before.
People don't know, like Ben is a hype machine, man.
Yeah.
Don't let the laid back nonchalant.
Yeah. JP yells bags. Mitch is yelling at, what else have I seen? I mean, outside of the one odd moment with the shirt, I think, Quinn is pretty pitch perfect about everything. And honestly, that I really, that's obviously, I don't even know why I brought it up because it's yesterday's news and it wasn't a big deal and whatever. But outside of that, I think he seems like very thoughtful in all of his answers. He's also obviously just a generally energetic, optimistic person. And you can kind of feel it coming out of him. And, sometimes teams take on the personality of their coach. And hopefully they will with this one because he seems to have the kind of attitude of football is fun, but we do need to be really good at it. And we're going to show you how to be good at it. And we're going to thoughtfully think about how to incorporate all of you personally, which is why I think somebody like Bobby Wagner leaves the West Coast to come here because he knows this, that he knows that that's what's going to happen. It's why Chin signed. It's why I do hope they'll figure out Forbes, so I feel it. Again, though, it is May. Everybody's really psyched about all the changes, new owners, new front office, new coaching staff, whole new roster. And the carryovers are people we like. Terry, John, Duran, very popular players who are very good at their position. Those are the carryovers here. And the rest of the roster has been turned upside down. So why wouldn't you feel positive about that? If there was negative energy around that, I would be very, very, very concerned. This should feel new, exciting. World's your oyster. Who knows what we're going to be? Let's find out together.
There you go. I agree. Bram, thanks a lot.
Yep.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Bram for joining me. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode talking to Louis Riddick of ESPN and former NFL executive. Talk to you next time.